first, we want to welcome everyone here. We're missing a couple of council members due to sickness, but we appreciate the big crowd. I think we hadn't seen a big crowd like this for quite a while. We have a lot of agenda items that we'll try to move right along. If you'd like to join me in a moment of silence for our community, our nation, those that are sick, I appreciate it. We bow our heads. Thank you. If you join with me to stand and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Now we've got presentation of awards to police officers by Chief Dan Carey. I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Good evening, Council. Good to see you. It'd be great if Rob came to help us celebrate these officers. I just got a feeling maybe they didn't come. This is one of the better parts of the job for me, so we're going to just hand out a couple of awards. I'll try to be quickly, so expedite, so you guys can get out of your meeting and certainly get out of a reasonable hour. So at first, I'm going to ask Detective Emily Beecham to come forward for a quick moment. She's going to receive her advanced law enforcement certificate. This is a pretty big deal, and it requires a certain amount of either education and training and years of experience. And Emily does have her master's degree in criminal justice, so that helped her a whole bunch. And then she has 4 years, well, in excess now. You have to have 4 years of experience as a police officer with her master's degree, and then in excess of 3,200 hours of additional training to receive this certification. So this is her advanced certification, and we are going to be presenting her, and it's an honor to do that. And that is a pretty big deal. Certainly, she's an asset to the department. She's doing a wonderful job. We appreciate her. Many years ago, I became a supervisor, and I used to be out there in the field, on the streets, doing the work, doing the job. And then all of a sudden, overnight, it seemed like I was shuffling papers and playing with paper clips. And I remember, not long after I made that transition, I remember an officer came in from the street, and he came into the office, and he had this big giant brick of what would be cocaine, pressed cocaine, the kind you typically would see in the movies. And it was this big old brick, it hadn't been cut yet, pressed, and he threw it down on the table. I remember looking at that brick going, what did I do? This is terrible. You know, I was envious and I was jealous. That's what I wanted to do. And here I am playing with paper clips and shuffling papers. But ever since then, I've continued to shuffle papers and play with paper clips for the most part. And I continue to live through the eyes of others. And it's when officers, detectives, when members of the police department come together and they really work together, work as a team, and they do outstanding work. That's what keeps me motivated and keeps me moving forward and keeps me loving this profession that I've been in for over 30 years now. And so tonight we have an example of some great work that has been done by our police department. I also have I have a phrase, a term that I often use called shaking the tree. And every once in a while, maybe you're doing an investigation and you just have a hunch as to maybe who your bad guy is, or maybe you have a lead, you got a possible suspect, but you really don't have any direct evidence to connect them to the crime. You certainly don't have enough to charge them and prosecute them, but it's just a little bit of a hunch. Sometimes you have nothing else but to just go out and shake that tree and see what falls out of the tree. And this case that we're just getting ready to talk about is one such incident where they didn't have much, they did have a suspect. They went out and shook that tree, and things started to fall out of that tree, and they shook it a little more, and more fell out of the tree, and things kept falling out of that tree. And just a couple days ago, last Thursday, they received some additional information, and they ended up executing a search warrant in Buncombe County, and they found a bunch of the stolen merchandise or some of the stolen merchandise that some of our residents were missing that this offender had stolen from them. And so we had already had this awards planned last Thursday, but they didn't quit. They kept shaking the tree, and more kept falling out. So we're gonna go ahead and recognize them here. I'm going to ask them to come forward. They can stand up here. We'll have Sergeant Ron Diaz come forward, Sergeant Michael Elizondo, Officers Jacob Leahy, Officers Isaiah Dwyer, Detectives Beecham, and Detective Gonzalez. Join me up here. I'll go ahead and read this and then present it to them. It's a reference breaking and entering cases. I will tell you this is going to be a kind of a general reading. It's more of a summary. It doesn't go into great detail for a couple reasons. First of all, we'd like to keep our investigative tactics somewhat private and not announce it to the world, but also it had to fit on one piece of paper, so we had to kind of keep it general and not very detailed. On the morning of January 3rd of 2023, officers responded to a breaking and entering to a home under construction. The following 2 days, there were additional break-ins reported in Fletcher. The various scenes were processed, and Sergeant Elizondo located a fingerprint that identified a possible suspect. Detectives located the suspect at his home. They interviewed the suspect and they conducted a search, making observations that connected the suspect to 2 of the reported cases. Initial charges were obtained reference these cases. As Officer Dwyer, Sergeant Diaz, and Detectives Beecham and Gonzalez continued the investigation. Additional evidence was obtained that connected the suspect to the 3rd case. Officer Leahy, Officer Dwyer, and the Detective Division began to share information from various past cases looking for similarities to the suspect's crimes. 4 additional cases going back as far as January of 2022 were examined and evidence subsequently found to connect the suspect to. The suspect was charged in all 7 incidents. Additionally, information referenced crimes committed by a suspect outside the jurisdiction of Fletcher was also obtained, as was the location where the suspect sold stolen proceeds. A search warrant was conducted and property from 2 Fletcher cases were recovered. These officers should be recognized for their observation skills, attention to detail, their ability to coordinate and manage a multifaceted case, and the communication and teamwork displayed that led to this successful outcome. So if you'll please join me in recognizing the wonderful work that these officers and detectives did. I appreciate the hard work that you guys do every day. One more time. Thank you very much.
We sure do appreciate your service. Oftentimes you hear about break-ins or things that happen in the community, and then you never hear anything else happen, or you feel like it gets dropped, and you never feel like that's what happens here in Fletcher, so we appreciate it.
Well, they closed 7 cases. I believe 4 of them was from 2022, going all the way back to last January. So they put in a lot of work and they put all the pieces together and made the connections.
Only 7?
Only 7. In Fletcher. We've helped solve some other ones outside of Fletcher. 7 inside.
Thank you so much. I think now what we have in line is public comments, and I see we've got 4 people that have signed up to speak. I also understand that some may be foregoing their time for Steve Watkins to go ahead and do a summary. I don't have a problem with going longer than 3 minutes if council members don't have a problem with that. Would that be okay with you and Trevor? Would that be okay?
That's okay.
We don't have a problem with foregoing that. Okay, Mr. Watkins.
All right. First of all, thank you, council, for the added time. So we'll address. So my neighbors and Windsor Boards, if you please stand up, let the council member hear. Thank you. And foregoing the number of people. So just so you know, that's only a couple of texts and a couple of Facebook posts.
We appreciate you being here.
So when we're here today, we're here to be heard. So first of all, something on the plus side, just let you know the ABC sign is supposed to be up tomorrow. So the big post is going up. So in my unofficial capacity, I just know I'm pass that along to you. So that's the fun stuff. So as I come here and speaking with my neighbors, a couple of items, I'll go through them. First of all is Fanning Bridge. We've talked about it, blue in the face. I know that there's been Eddie Henderson worked on it in the past. What I'd like to do is head up a group, task force, whatever you would call it. I'll do the legwork for council. I know it's a headache and it's a state DOT issue, so know that going in. And I told so many other folks, I have had a wonderful career in sales with Johnson & Johnson. And every time I got told no, and it's a difficult obstacle, I would never have won all the awards I've got. So all I want is council support. So when I go talk to Mr. Moffitt, Ms. Balcom, they're going to say, well, what does town council say? I'd like to be able to say I have their support to move forward. And what I want to do is get Fanning Bridge Road restricted. What's funny is I know the town wants it, and I can tell you why. You don't want semis coming by your town council. It's right out here in the street, no semis. So I know that's the issue, is it's the state. So all I'm looking for is town council support to me. When I deal with our state representatives, it can be done. I've looked up roads that have been done. It won't be easy, but I just want your support.
Explain your restriction, just to.
We want to restrict semis and heavy trucks. It's a commercial corridor. It was never designed to be that. They've got the two corners that are restricted to 25 miles an hour. 18-wheelers were never meant to be going through there all day and all night. So that's the first thing. Next is the cut through traffic from Rutledge Road. It's current and will be going much more than we talked to in the past. Once those two developments get going, we're going to be dealing with the same thing that South Chase deals with still, cut through traffic. I went through there today. Traffic's backed up, definitely. Yes, but I had business there. So what I'd like to know about that, so I'm aware of the past fiasco in South Chase where they asked about speed bumps. Then when they tried it, the community there was up in arms. So I looked up the state regulations. You need 60% approval from the neighborhood. The one question I have is what counts 60%? Is it one house, one vote, or the household people? If you can let me know that, then I can move forward to find out that number to come back to me. The issue of cost. Looked up in Asheville, some of the data is about, we have to look at it, maybe we get a better deal. It's about $4,000 per speed hump. Significant amount of money. But, you know, I've talked to my neighbors, if we can spend $350,000 on a basketball court, we can have a couple of speed bumps through South Chase and Windsor Forest. Next thing is we'd like to get the speed limit reduced in Windsor Forest to 15 miles an hour.
To how much?
From 25 to 15. What are you talking about, Laura? I talked to Mr. Beaverdorf about that. He did a study and said, well, traffic is 25 throughout. And the study doesn't show any excessive speed. But the neighbors on here would like to lower the speed limit. I'd like to think if we show up and say lower the speed limit, we can get that done. It's not. So when we always talk about speeding in the neighborhood. But technically, if you drive 25 miles an hour through there, you're not speeding, but it's way too fast. So there's that. Last is traffic enforcement. Too bad all the officers left, but I hope the chief is here. I stopped by last week and stopped by the department and wanted to get the data on citations. Well, I was extremely upset that the lady that greeted me wanted to know why I wanted to know. It's not allowed. My response was I wanted to know. So here's the data. This is from Captain Gutierrez. So for 6 months, from 8/1 to 2/1, there were 42 speeding tickets. That's 7 a month. Are we getting traffic enforcement in Fletcher? I don't think so. 2 stop sign citations in 6 months. You could go to Fanning Bridge at midnight and get a speeding tractor trailer every night. You sit in Windsor Forest and run stop sign citations all day. We need enforcement. I don't know why we're not getting it. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know if it comes from council, the town manager, to our chief. But the numbers speak for themselves, and they're here. You can have 6 months, 42 speeding tickets. I think one of them was my goofy son-in-law, got it out here on 25, just 6 months ago. So we would like to know about that. We'd like to get enforcement of what we need to do. We certainly have plenty of officers. You know, low enforcement, because we've talked with Mr. Davey, talked with the mayor, that we as a town are being squeezed. There's not a whole lot we can do about it. But I've spoken to the chief about it, spoken to the mayor about it. I said, but we can make Fletcher uncomfortable for these transits that fly through here. I was not heard. Well, hopefully when we see this crowd, this will get some attention. Last thing. This is hot on the top. Taxes. We want tax neutral. Everybody else got hit with IRAs and 401ks depleting last year. Our town can go on a financial diet. Nothing wrong with that. If we're spending $350,000 a basketball court, $650,000 for parks and rec, way out of proportion for a town this size. So we'll tax neutral. And with that, thank you, my neighbors. I appreciate your time.
Mr. Watkins? you
Oh,
were
now I'm in
asking-
trouble.
Pardon?
So now I'm in trouble. You want me to come back?
No, I was noting what you were mentioning, and so I was just wondering, do you think you have 60% approval in Windsor Forest? And what's the census on 25 to 15?
We had a traffic group meeting. It was overwhelming to want 15 to slow down. I mean, again, I would say, if you have time, drive through the neighborhood and drive at 25, you'll go, oh, just right. Now, we do have people that drive through there 25. I'm sure you would want it lower. And the 60%, I'd say, yeah. And look, I get this many people out here without a whole lot of effort. So, and there's a lot of fired up people who want to do some lead work. You know, we're trying to protect the neighborhood. You know, you go through Windsor Forest, we've kept it up, it looks good, and the cut through is it's gonna crush the integrity of our neighborhood. Because we already have people that are careless that drive through there. I talked to one police officer, I forget his name, and talking about, you know, the drunk drivers that cut through Fanning Bridge to Rutledge to go up to the ice park. You know, when we do a neighborhood cleanup, we find liquor bottles up and down Fanning Bridge. So I think, yes, 60%. Yeah, we'll see. But I certainly wouldn't come to you without it, I can tell you that. Because we will avoid that South Chase fiasco. If we come to you to get them, we'll have overwhelming support.
I appreciate you sharing what you think the census is, and I know I've taken notes as well as council members, and hopefully when the mayor and Mr. Davey is able to make it back, maybe we can go through line item by line item and see what we can do.
Okay. All right, we appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We appreciate all of you showing up. Approval of minutes, corrections, additions, and deletions. This would be for January 3rd and January 9th.
Sheila, before we move on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right, I was on there and then it was on the whole sheet.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Olson.
I want to echo what Steve said. I know I have young children and I live on a thoroughfare in Livingston Farms. We've had issues with one neighbor in particular, but through the years, from time to time, it happens. It's not as much of a cut through South Chase or Windsor Forest, but we do have neighbors who don't use 25 miles per hour is too fast if you've got kids out there playing. I have young children who've been playing on those streets. And I spoke to the gentleman, he's like, I'm going to speed limit. So we've talked to Chief about it in the past, we've had police out there. I know South Chase has come up on this a bunch, on the speed bumps, and I know in the past we looked at it, they didn't have, the support they thought they had, because it's, the support's going to come from people that are on those thoroughfares, are the ones who have children or are most at risk. Those who are on side street, it's an inconvenience, right? They don't have kids, they have to go just deal with speed bumps, and they live where it's not as much of an impact to them, so it's challenging to get that 60%. But and then the argument has been that, well, if one wants it, they'll all want it. Well, that's never been very persuasive to me. I think if they want it, it's not to be frivolous, it's because it's for the safety of our children and our communities. And yeah, if it's something the town demands, like, I don't look into that. I didn't have as much time, I didn't know. But, let's see if I can bring out some movies and farm sports for it. I'm not if I can. But I did want to touch on the public records issue. Steve mentioned his experience. It's something I care deeply about. I would call and ask Congress. I appreciate Mark, Christine, and Eric have been so generous and helpful with public records and been very service-oriented when I've had requests. But I would hope that we could create or maybe draft a public records policy or add it to an employee handbook or have some training around it so that our public-facing staff come with that same attitude, because there's probably a helpful comment, like, hey, what do you need this for, so I can find the right way to get you what you actually need. But for somebody, not as persistent as Mr. Watkins, they may have been dissuaded and been like, oh, if I don't have a reason or I don't want to give that reason, maybe I'm not entitled to these documents, and the public is, and really we shouldn't be asking what do you want it for. And it's a tough line, right? We want them to say, what do you want it for, so I can help you get the right thing, but at the same time, we don't want to make them feel like they're asking for something they're not entitled to. So, hope you consider that. I brought in CGS 132, and I'll share with Christine at the minutes if we could.
Okay. My apologies. Did I have anyone else that wanted to speak during public hearing?
I did.
Okay. Come on up.
Just very briefly, I'm a resident of Windsor Forest, and it's a lovely community. We have lots of people that walk and dogs
Just
that...
get your name for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's Meg Rosthal. So I've lived in Windsor Forest about a year and a half, and it's a great community, very quiet. People walk their dogs, children play. We do have some people who speed, and I think additional enforcement would be helpful, and we can also exert some pressure if they're our neighbors. But what I'm most concerned about is the temptation to come through from the new residents in the homes on Rutledge. It's going to be very, very tempting for them to want to come through, and they're going to be in a hurry to get to the other side of Golden Ridge Road. So we're just asking that you work with us and to find a solution that works for everyone. Speed bumps, lowered speed limit, additional stop signs, I think would all discourage the cut-through traffic. So we're just looking for some mutual cooperation between us and you. And certainly we would not come back until we knew that we had 60% support. So we'll work on it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just curious, have you ever thought about having your community gated? How does the HOA play with that?
Sheila, if I can just,
An HOA.
if I can, well, no,
But hold on, I just said HOA, I mean, rest assured, to my neighbors, we're not an HOA, we're not trying to get one.
Thank you.
So it's come up with, and we brought it up in front of council before. Well, one is the gated, the expense, that would just, if it's possible, if it's allowed, we'd probably come up with the dollar. But I think from what I understand, talking with Mark in the past, then all of a sudden that takes the maintenance of the streets on us and the whole, not just putting up a gate and paying for it. So, but it is highly talked about if there's some way we could do it.
Okay, thank you.
There's some Powell bill. We get funds through Powell bill for street maintenance,
Right.
construction for town maintained streets,
Right.
and they don't allow gating of those public streets. And
That's
we
all
lose our
for that.
Powell bill maintenance funds for
Okay,
it.
thank you. If that's all of public hearing, we'll move on to approval of minutes as stated before January 3rd, January 9th. We've had time to to review. Do you have any questions, concerns? May I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion.
In a second?
A second.
All those in favor? Aye. And so they stand approved. Number 2, do we have any council updates with the 2 members present? Okay, thank you so much. Consent agenda, we also reviewed this during agenda review. Do we have any questions or concerns in regards to consent agenda? Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as it stands? Make a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, in a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Consent agenda approved. Number 4, public hearing to consider economic incentives for Project Expo. I think we have Ms. Brady with us from Henderson County Partnership for Economic Development. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you so much for having me here. We have Project Expo before you this evening. Project Expo is a global leader of technology in manufacturing, looking to create a manufacturing site in the United States. Located in Europe, the company is considering Alabama and North Carolina for their first United States location. The U.S. location would increase the production to serve their North and South America customer base. In addition, the U.S. location would improve their sustainability mission to produce products where they are consumed. The project is considering a real estate expansion within the county and has purchased new equipment. If the project is approved, then the company would invest $2 million over 2 years in real property improvements. An additional $33,750,000 would be invested in machinery and equipment over 5 years. The company would create 92 positions with an average wage of $67,739. The first year incentive, if approved for the town of Fletcher, would be $16,706.25. And the life of the incentive, if approved for the town of Fletcher, would be $352,908.48. Any questions in regards to the project?
Do we need to open for public hearing? I'd like to make a motion to open for public hearing in regards to this item.
Make a motion.
In a second, please.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. We're now open for public hearing. If anyone has any concerns or questions in regards to the economic incentives that has been proposed by Ms. Brady. May we have a motion? Do we have any questions or concerns? We reviewed fairly well before. I appreciate that. Do we have a motion to close public hearing?
Make a motion.
And a second, please.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. And now public hearing is closed. You want to go ahead and,
You'd be required to take action on it, or consider taking action.
okay, today. Do we have a motion to approve the economic incentives as proposed to us?
Make a motion.
And a second, please.
I'll second.
And all those in favor? Aye. Okay, we have approved economic incentives as presented by Ms. Brady. Thank you so much for taking time to come.
Thank you. Appreciate your support.
We appreciate all you're doing. We look forward to hosting you in a couple of weeks.
And just, as far as the next steps, once the company makes a formal announcement of coming, then we'll work on an incentive agreement. So they'll kind of iron out all those details.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate it.
Next on the agenda, approval of lowest responsible bidder for street resurfacing projects. I think we have Mr. Kathy from McGill Associates to present to us. Mr. Kathy. Good evening.
Hey, how are y'all?
Doing well.
I think Mark, I
passed out the information.
Yeah, and you should have in your supplemental packet, there was a memo that listed all the bids that we received and opened last Thursday afternoon on the, I think it was the 9th, and there's an apparent lowest responsive bidder, and then McGill Associates, then they do a tabulation, bid tabulation, and so if you want to talk about the recommended low bidder, which is CMT paving.
All the data's there. We had 4 bidders, and CMT was low. They have done it before and have a good reputation in town, so I have no concerns with that. And we were within $1,000 of our budget there, so I recommend that we proceed with that one.
And just to reiterate, the low bid did come in at $124,871.90. And there's enough fund.
Council, what streets those were again?
Hawks Nest and Sandpiper Court. Those are both in South Chase when you enter from Wood Hill and turn right onto Plum Springs. They're off to the right there.
Thank you. Okay, do you need a motion on this today? Okay.
Yes, if we could, so that McGill would work on putting the contract documents, getting the bid bond and performance bond.
Did you say CMT paving has done paving for us before?
They have.
Okay. Thank you so much. Do I have a motion to approve lowest bidder?
I'll make the motion.
And can we have a second for the lowest bidder?
Have a second?
And all those in favor?
Aye.
And it's approved. Thank you.
I was going to stay on for the next one too.
Oh,
Yeah,
are you?
and that was kind of me and Ben covering that one.
Okay. Item number 6, approval of quote for emergency repairs to stream bank water in section of trail at Billmore Community Park.
Yeah, so it's kind of across from the concessions for those who haven't noticed it, the greenway or walking trail that runs parallel to the creek. And back in January, we got a bunch of rains that basically caused that to erode and start to fall down into the stream. And it's starting to break into the trail, and it's obviously a public safety issue to close that off because it gets so much pedestrian bike traffic along there. We called in Ben Kathy McGill Associates to help us find a contractor to quickly look at this to see if it can be addressed. And the copy you have in your packet is from the quote is from Huntley Construction, and Ben can attest to this. They've done a lot of the drainage improvement work in the park. They've done several projects. They've also done the other 4 sections of the stream. Was it about 5 years ago we found out where it had eroded and was starting to cut into the trail, and we went through a design bid process, and Huntley wound up getting the lowest responsible bidder. And and they did great work, and they've done great work on some of the other drainage issues we've had, particularly those kind of swale areas between the main drive and the creek, that grass area there, which got really bad about 10 years ago. And due to the public safety element and high traffic, we wanted to suggest consideration of the quote that Huntley Construction provided. You have in your packet, and it's at $49,000 and some odd dollars, almost $50,000. So I read my copy here. It was at $49,896. And Ben, if you could speak to the depth of the work they'll do in the area, and any other comments?
They are planning on, and we just utilized a similar repair of what we did in a similar failure portion of that slope and then use an earth embankment above that and stabilize it with a core matting, which is a all-natural matting, and then relocate a little bit longer stretch of the trail. About 80 feet of the trail will be slid away from it, and that will be about a 30-some foot repair of the stream bank itself. So we just took the details from before. It's a very similar situation. So we feel like this is the most efficient way for the town to get this done and get it done quickly. There's also a power pole right there beside this. If we continue to get failures, we're getting very close to power pole. So that was, instead of going through a lengthy and not very expensive, but we would spend money on a lengthier design process, I think we'll be better off just to, straight to construction. And
Or
get
it gets
done.
worse.
And they had similar design specs that from when we did the 4 repair areas about 5 years ago, and we're trying to follow a similar one, which has been effective to this date. I don't think, was that, Sheila was asking me earlier, was that area one that he had worked on before, or no?
It had, that area did not have the boulder toe
It
on
did, okay, so
It
it
was
had
just-
it, but not boulder
Yeah,
toes.
it was-
Okay,
it was still an earthen embankment, so.
yeah.
How are they holding up right now?
The whole stream is a little tricky. I mean, it's just a matter of time with all of it. It's steep. There's steep sections that are undermining. When we walked it 5 years ago, it's it's one of those, it's like we'd love to fix it, but, financially to try to fix all of those, it's tough. Now, the section that they did in Boulder Toe is doing fine upstream. And once a failure happens, it's prime spot for the next one to happen, because you've stripped away, the roots are our best friend up there, either native shrubs or trees. That's probably the only thing that's holding the majority of that thing together. So when we have a slide, a tree fall and a slide, or just a slide, that area becomes now stripped of all the roots, and now it's it's just like an open wound. It's the perfect spot for it to fail the next time. But the boulder toe tends to help the area that will get saturated as events. As we have flow events come up and down, it gets saturated and weakened, and then it wants to slough. So we try to get the boulder toe in that more susceptible zone, and then plant shrubs and things above it. So it's a proven method, but it is a stream bank, so there's no guarantees on stream banks.
And we'd like to look at a bigger picture. We're trying to figure out how to tackle this, like maybe look at the whole length on the town side of the street there, from the back bridge to maybe the bridge at Power Gap, to maybe evaluate all the high-risk areas, and do we do a bigger fix, which is really costly, but maybe there might be some grant funds out there to help offset some of that cost, because it's a pretty costly, ambitious undertaking. But I mean, people love that trail, and it is it's a really nice trail that runs along the creek.
What's the length of the trail that it's actually objected?
Oh, this one, the repair?
This whole section,
the whole-
the whole creek going through?
I haven't measured it.
It's several hundred feet, yeah, it's running along. I would say you're pushing 500-600 feet up through there.
What were you asking, from the back of the park all the way?
No, it's a section.
Oh, yeah.
Is
Just
it,
a section.
Yeah,
you can in the future relocate the trail, is that a possibility too? If you saw wash it out?
yeah,
You know,
it's,
I'm trying to think long term.
sure.
The back portion of the park, that would be real simple, and the front portion probably, because we have a large swell from the trail to the street, and we would disturb that drainage. So you would lose some mature trees, or you'd want to move it next to the road, and then, no, that's, you don't necessarily want your pedestrians right next to the entry drive. So there's possibilities, yes. There's options that can be looked at.
There's just some challenges right in there as it drops off down into that swale area.
Have any other questions?
And we have some money budgeted because we realizing some of the chronic issues with stream banks or trails. So that'll offset about, 20,000 of the cost. And then we have to come back for the budget amendment for the difference.
Dan, how quickly can they get to it, do you think?
They thought they could come before the end of the month or early March, and then they thought they could have it done in a couple of weeks.
In about 2 weeks? Okay.
So it should be finished in March is what they're thinking right now.
If we don't have worse weather,
If
and
it-
get further
yeah.
along.
You never know.
We want to go ahead and make a motion to approve for this emergency repair on the stream at $49,896. Have a motion to approve that?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion approved.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Item number 7, update on proposed mitigation improvements affecting Town Center project. Warren?
Thank you, Sheila. So I went through all the list of items that at this point DOT is recommending based on the last version of the traffic impact analysis to try and get this section of Town Center project back on track. So I won't go through them all again unless you want me to do that. I can. Kind of the one hanging issue from the discussion last week was, they had 2 different iterations of the mitigation improvements, one with or without the convenience store gas station element of the project. And the one that it stayed in was considering extending Old Cane Creek Road here where it would meet up with Howard Gap. Obviously, a lot of questions. How long would that have to, how quickly would it have to be done? What would be the path? How much right of way would town have to give up on town property to do that? So I reached out to DOT. I don't have an answer yet, but I wanted to get some guidance on if I brought a resolution back to you in March. Just kind of, what are they thinking? Because that hasn't really been articulated, like how quickly the road and the path. And, they said an extension and as far south as you can go on Howard Gap where it would connect, or basically trying to stay as far away from the Howard Gap 25 intersection if it connected down to Howard Gap. So I reached out to the division engineer and hadn't had a response yet, and emailed as well. So they're thinking about that. They'll get it back to me. I'd like to try and get a draft out in advance of March to get your reaction on it. Because I know there's some concerns about how much area, what facilities might have to be taken down that are there. We talked about the big warehouse screen building and of course Public Works being where they are. So that's essentially the only other update I have from last week in the discussion. And, just the general reaction was the other improvements that DOT is, at least at this point, saying would have to be mitigation improvements weren't that bad. At least reaction of the engineer who was representing the developer, Will Bowie, who was at the meeting. So that's encouraging news. But now I've got to kind of factor in how comfortable are you if this extension of Old Cane Creek has to happen and connect. So I don't know if there's any other questions or comments, and I'll continue to keep you updated via email on this. But,
Any further comments?
You think they can go ahead and just move forward on the Fanning Bridge part of the DOT side, getting that cut in lane and having it separate with everything else to go ahead and, because that will leave a lot of traffic.
Yeah, I mean,
Just move with that one
Yeah,
thing.
get that one thing moving, get it done. and
We
then-
needed that without.
it
the
needed, that needed
development.
done before regardless of any impact that this would have on traffic. I mean, yes, we can say we need you to do that regardless. I guess the kicker is in this, chicken and egg thing here, if they're gonna sign off on what mitigation improvements have to happen based on the specific, details of the project there. Well, they gotta know if they're gonna move forward with that or without it. So, I mean, we've gotta get an answer on this overall, I guess, before we say, can you do this regardless of the town center project? But yeah, it needed to be done before this was happening, and now they're saying it needs to be done because this is happening.
Well, maybe you could mention that to them about the right turn lane on Fan Bridge and push for that. I appreciate you and Will Bowie working so closely together. Hopefully next month we'll have something moving,
Yes, yeah,
have a moving forward target.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, compared to what we started out with, and what DOT is coming back with on the traffic impact analysis, this is significantly less and, appears, at least on face surface, something that maybe, all parties can work on to get done, because, there's potential developer has to contribute more resources for the road improvements. Is it gonna be with the town and the developer, DOT, what part do they play, and either any of the construction costs or right of way, since they're all DOT roads.
Thank you. I won't read through the upcoming events. You've got the list of trying to do, but I will make mention, we've got a budget workshop on March 29th. We have an Easter egg hunt on April 1st, and shred event and hill drop on April 15th. Those are three main things. Have any other comments from council?
I don't know if you want to get the manager comments.
Absolutely, I thought, absolutely. Do you have any major comments to include before we adjourn?
Just, you started talking about I think that the document shredding hill drop, that, again, that's coming up we have that on the bottom here on the,
April 15th.
in April, yep. So, that and the Polco, the citizen survey. So,
Yes.
again, it went out initially about mid-January, the postcard, then the hard copy follow-up went after that. There's been some difficulty with some people's, and they're good mailing addresses, the post office sending them back. We didn't get a ton. I mean, we kept track of it, and they asked us to do that because they actually come back here, even though we don't receive the results and compile it. We're asking Polco to do that. And then the next phase, and this is just another opportunity for the public to participate, who haven't done it by the postcard or the hard copy mailing. The open participation period started Friday, the 10th. And we put some information on our website and Facebook, and I'm going to do a connect, one of those blackboard calls. I'll send that out. Was going to do it tonight, but probably tomorrow. The open participation period goes through the 24th, and then after that, we'll start compiling the results. So there's another opportunity for the public to participate. And, we're trying to advertise that as much as we can. I didn't notice on.
Oh, and I have one other thing on that too. Excuse me.
Or
The open participation, so I called them, or I emailed and went back and forth and reminded them, we asked for that.
I know they're trying to dissuade us from putting it in there. So, and I don't think I emailed you about that last interchange I had with them. And so they told me they've added it, and it's supposed to be like just a general open-ended, any other comments you have for us, that kind of thing. So that should be on the spot online version.
It is, that's one thing I was saying.
Oh, okay, oh, it is, oh.
I clicked it, it's a double check, spin all the way down, the very last question is comments from our citizens, which is very, very important.
Yes, yeah, I know that it was really important, and I was, quite frankly, pretty frustrated that we spent a lot of time trying to decide how that question would go on there, and were we gonna pay additional money to sort the information. I responded to them and all that. So partly, I probably should have caught it proofing it on the last version, but we did ask for that in there, so. Thanks for mentioning it.
Anything else?
I didn't, thank you.
You want to make a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, sir.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion's adjourned.